the gas stations that we think of as Ferguson gas stations are actually in the nearby municipality. Like, that's how small it is. They don't even have their own gas station, right? So I thought that there was no way it could be Ferguson, Missouri. When I found out it was the place that was right beside where my parents had raised me, I went down there about 9 p.m. to see what was going on. And immediately you could tell just in the air that there was something different, there was something wrong. Today, April 25th, marks the 2-year anniversary of another young black man who was gunned down in St. Louis named Kerry Ball. He was 25 years old, he was an honors student, he was chased by the police. For full disclosure, he actually did have a gun that day, right? Like, he had a gun that he was allowed to carry. Because he didn't think he was, he threw it off. They chased him for another 3 blocks or so, and I believe they shot at him 30-something times. So we've seen this before in St. Louis, right? We've seen this before all over the United States, but there was something about going down there that night and speaking with the people, speaking with the folks who came outside of their front doors to see a dead body and stayed an hour and it was still there, and stayed 2 hours and it was still there, and stayed 3 hours and saw families show up and have them have to be the ones to cover his body with a sheet, right? Like, there was something about being down there that night. There was something in the air, there was something about looking in the eyes of these people and hearing the exact same story time and time again, which is that he had his hands up, right? There was something about that held me and that made me basically, I don't even know if I felt that I had to be committed because I didn't yet know what was happening, right? But I felt like there was something I had to do. So that night we went to the Ferguson Police Department, and I think that was pretty much our first organized protest, right? We didn't know what to do. We just knew that the police weren't speaking to us. We knew that they had not released even 2 sentences to say what had happened, but everyone knew that a boy named Mike Brown was murdered. And we pretty much just went out there to say, hey, acknowledge this, right? Like, tell us what happened. It took the police 20 hours to even acknowledge that something had happened after all of that. After all of that. And then when we finally got that information and we saw how they tucked Darren Wilson away, and it took, I think it took 11 days to get his name, right? When we were told the day after we were going to get it, when we saw that response, when we saw police officers speed up to 60 miles per hour to avoid the crowds of people that were outside the police department asking just for answers, when you saw that, when I got down there at 9 o'clock and I saw that there were police on every corner, you just knew that there was something that was not quite right, aside from an unarmed citizen killing, right? Like, there was something that was not quite right. August 13th, for me, was the first day that I got tear gassed. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd day they actually used it. It was the first day for me that it was directly used on me. After that day, my rage grew exponentially. I was already pissed off. I was already hurt. I was already afraid of what could happen from seeing the response on August 9th. And then August 13th, those worst fears were realized for me. I didn't think that I would be tear gassed living in my own country. That wasn't even a thought that crossed my mind. After that day, it just became this show of resilience of saying, you know, this is not enough to make us go away. You can use rubber bullets on us. You can use batons. You can use your tear gas. You can bring your tanks. You can bring your Humvees, whatever you'd like. We're still going to be here standing up for this young black member of our community and saying what happened. On Labor Day, a group of people that termed themselves Black Lives Matter came into Ferguson, Missouri. That was about a month and a half after young folks such as myself, and I say young, right? I just had my 30th birthday. So, thank you. Thank you. When you hear young, a lot of the people out there are, you know, between 21 and 30, but there are also some high school kids out there that are really doing great work. But they're people that look like myself, people that were working 9-to-5 jobs, people that were going to school, folks that, you know, just had these very mundane daily lives. I don't want to call them mundane, but really there was nothing exciting, right? Like, they were ordinary. And then this happened. And we realized that if we could garner that type of reaction, if they didn't even see us as human, like, why was that, right? Like, why was that? And we began to see, some of us were already kind of radicalized and politicized, that we saw this initially as for what it is, right? Like an issue of race. We saw that immediately. Other folks, it took a little time. But when Black Lives Matter came in to Ferguson, there was something about walking into that space with 500 or 600 black people from around the nation that pretty much just came in to say, we're here to stand for you. We're here to stand with you. We know you're tired. We see you, and we hurt with you, right? After a month and a half of taking tear gas, after a month and a half of talking to police on the front lines, of yelling at police, of getting arrested in mass numbers, of facing this state occupation in the place where I grew up, this wonderful group of people came in and really told us that not only were we not alone, but that the world was really watching and that people actually cared. It took about maybe 2 weeks for me to fall in love with the team, Black Lives Matter. St. Louis is known for being very confrontational. I can tell you all of the stories of people who came in from other places that were shunned away at first. There's a pastor actually from Oakland whose name is Michael McBride. He goes out with his collar on and his Air Forces, and he will tell you that he received probably about 4 turnaways that involved numerous 4-letter words before he was able to stick around. So we're not a city that loves people initially, but the love was so real in the room of Black Lives Matter and at the ride, and the way that they came into the space and offered healing for us initially, like we didn't even know we needed that, right? I saw that this was a group that for me, I could do sustained work through, right? I saw that this case of Michael Brown was something that the world was watching, was something that the nation was really keyed into, and was something special that potentially folks that like myself that stood up could utilize to do this work, right? Could transcend this moment into a movement, which is a term a lot of people like to say. But we saw that really quickly, and thank God for Black Lives Matter riding in and really showing us that not only were there people who had been doing this work for years and years that love us for standing up, but that they were willing to offer support in whatever way that was necessary. And for St. Louis, that was so important. I've been in the Bay now for about 4 months, I think, and there's a really, really amazing culture of activism here. There's a really amazing culture of people just giving a fuck, excuse my language. In St. Louis, we really don't have that. We have the NAACP, we have the Urban League, and we have the Black Church, all of whom failed us. All of whom failed us. So like I said, it took young folks like me to really stand up and say that this is something more, and we want to be active in this. And through the connections and the networks made from the people who came into St. Louis in August and September and October for Ferguson October, where we had a huge rally, and through the people who came down for the Black Lives Matter ride, we really began to do this work on a national scale. I went up to Ohio for the John Crawford grand jury sitting and was able to connect with the Ohio Student Association and learn more about folks who were taking up the cause around the nation, to learn that it wasn't just Ferguson standing up, that the response that we garnered was unique, especially for 2015 or 2014 at the time, right? Like that was unique, but that there were people around the nation that were doing this work. And when I found that out, the organized community is so small, right? And it just seemed that I met one person, and then I met 2, and then I met 3, and then I met 4. And I kept meeting these really, really amazing people that were able to connect and verbalize what I was feeling and what I was experiencing. One of those people was a woman named Kimberly Crenshaw. How many of you all have heard of her name? Right? Okay. How many of you all have heard of the term intersectionality? Right? Okay, so Kimberly Crenshaw is a Black woman who actually cultivated that theory, right? Like that's her work. And that's important to note too. Her name is Kimberly Crenshaw, and she's a Black woman who coined that term that many of you have heard. The reason she coined it is because there was nothing prior to that to really address the issues that people such as myself, a young Black queer woman, navigate the world facing, right? Like there was nothing to address the fact that there was a women's rights movement, that there was a gay rights movement, right? And that there were like pro-Black movements that didn't really address any of my entire identity. Nothing, right? Like when we talk about feminism, Black women are often left out of that. When we talk about gay rights, anybody that's not a well-off, cis white man is pretty much left out. And historically, unfortunately, when we talk about pro-Black movements, a lot of times women have gotten left out and queer folks have gotten left behind, right? So where does that leave me as a queer Black woman? And that's why intersectionality is so important. And that's why Black Lives Matter is so important. Because the 3 women that actually created Black Lives Matter, right? 2 Black queer women and 1 Nigerian immigrant. They understand because they navigate the world in the way that I do. They navigate the world in the way that a lot of Black folks do, which is not just sectioning our Blackness off, which is not putting aside parts of our identity so that we can further a different agenda, right, that meets only part of us. It's not saying I'm going to get involved in the gay rights movement but not care about racial justice, because I'm affected by both of those things. And Black Lives Matter really gets that, and it takes that framework that says that the margins of the margins have to be centered. So when we talk about leadership, when we talk about issues, when we talk about addressing systemic oppression, we have to make sure that we're centering the people who are most oppressed by these systems, right? And across the board, that is not cisgendered men. Whether you're Black or white, across the board, it's time for you to step aside, right? It's time for women to be at the forefront of leadership. We've tried the charismatic male leadership. We tried that with MLK, we tried it with Malcolm X, we tried it with Medgar Evers, so on and so forth, right? We've realized that when you allow people, or when we ourselves as Black folks take the framework that our Blackness comes before anything else, as though I could be Black before I'm a woman, right? As though they don't simultaneously occur in my body. When we take that framework, it's harmful to people like myself, and it's also harmful to us overall. It's harmful to the entire race. It's harmful to all the work that we do to not address all Black lives. So when you see Black Lives Matter, I know that there's misconceptions. People will put Black Lives Matter on a flyer and say, you know, special prayer for Black men. Or I'm so tired of Black men getting gunned down in the street. Or they'll say, you know, Black Lives Matter, and if we only end police brutality, then everything is okay. This moment that we're in, stemmed from police brutality. That's right, there's something utterly visceral that happens when we see someone get gunned down by the people who are supposed to protect and serve us, right? Like, that's a particular kind of evil, it's a particular kind of oppression that we need to address. And it's something that people can grasp onto easily. But what people are having trouble with is that when we say Black Lives Matter, we don't only mean our literal breath, right? We don't mean our lives matter and then they're taken away and that's when we take up the cause. We mean that while we are living and breathing, our quality of life matters as well. And if you look at our quality of life across the board, we are being oppressed while we're living and we're being gunned down by the people who are supposed to protect and serve us. So when we say Black Lives Matter, we're addressing, you know, issues of gentrification and mass displacement, as I like to call it, out of our own communities. We're addressing issues of food desert and thinking of food co-ops and food justice and ways to make sure that we're maintaining healthy eating habits for our people, right? We're definitely talking about the school to prison pipeline. We're talking about the prison industrial complex, because when you look at the prisons, who are the people that are occupying these, right? We're talking about the militarization of the police, because when you see the police and you see who these weapons are used on, and we have to do this through our own data collection because this program has ran unchecked for as long as Mike Brown was allowed to live. That's how long this program was implemented in '97, and they have let it run unchecked. They have just given military weapons to the police, and you see them utilized on folks like myself in Ferguson, in Oakland, in LA, in New York, and no one says who are these being used on. But thanks to independent data collection, we know that they're being used on Black and brown communities, right? So all of these things have to be addressed in Black Lives Matter, and that's really the work that we're doing today is, you know, number one, making sure that when we're going out and we're doing the work, the people that are at the forefront, the people who are at the table, the people who are implementing the strategy are the most oppressed and the most affected. Because how can you solve a problem without input from the people who are affected by it, right? We're also making sure that people understand that Black Lives Matter, what that means as an ideal, what that means as a hashtag, what that means as an organization, is not just about police brutality, but it's about the overall quality of Black life and making sure that the affirmation that we know to be true, which is that our lives matter, is exemplified in the world we move in, right? And thirdly, I think if I want to give you anything else to take away from, you know, my experience in Ferguson and the work through Black Lives Matter, it's just to make sure that you're not going to get the same treatment that the black folks that are out there standing will have? How are you willing to put that privilege on the line, right? How are you willing to sacrifice that? You're able to go out, you know, and as white folks, like you're able to go out and you're able to move in spaces that when I go in that room, I get looked at, right? As a white person, you're able to speak to someone else from a different place. If you truly understand and believe that Black Lives Matter, you're able to speak to someone who may not understand that from a different place than I am. You're able to take up that charge, right? So that's what I definitely want to leave you with here today, is those three things. Make sure you're centering the margins in whatever you do. If you've had the opportunity to hire a black trans woman and you didn't, think about if you're really centering the margins, right? Think about what it means to actually be an ally and go out and do this work. And think about what it means if we are to navigate the world collectively in a way that says that Black lives actually do matter. Thank you.